Gentry and I were both from Oxford. We're born here and raised here, and we knew each other in high school, probably even before that a little bit, but we didn't really start hanging out until high school. He was in a band called Nightmare on Sesame Street, and I was in a band called Dead Fish, and they were punk bands, and we just started hanging out, doing shows, and eventually we graduated high school, and I guess the name the Cooters came about when I was in high school, because there used to be a thing on the square called square squatting, and it was people would go up on the square on Friday nights, and it was basically a bunch of pickup trucks, and people would just hang out on the square and be up to no good. It's not like it is today. The square was dead back then. There wasn't the bar scene there. It was pretty much just department stores and clothing stores, and the only people that really did square squatting were basically like the redneck crowd. And I used to hang out with everybody. It didn't matter who they were. I'd hang out with any group of people, but some of my friends in high school saw me up there on a Friday night hanging out, and they started calling me Cooter after the Dukes of Hazzard, because I was hanging out with the redneck crowd, and it just kind of stuck. And eventually in 1993, we moved into a house together and decided to start a band, and that name came up again, and it just stuck again, and we've never been able to get rid of it, really. Yeah. It's just always been there, and it's part of our fabric now.
We would try different names for the band, and people would always just call us the Cooters anyway. So we're like, forget it. We'll just call ourselves the Cooters.
The original Cooters was us two plus Tyler Keith. He was the drummer, and we played for about a year, and the Neckbones kind of stole him away from us, and he started playing guitar, and we tried some other drummers, and eventually Mikey came around about 1994. And started playing with us, and he's been with us for the last 18 years.
Is it true, the legend behind you guys are the oldest, I guess, still working band in Oxford?
I think that's correct. Nobody else has been continuously touring and recording as long as we have.
Congratulations on that.
Thanks. I cannot discuss my name like that in a public forum. Raw Cooter.
You don't get to choose your Cooter name. That's the thing. Anybody who's got a Cooter name has got it because they didn't choose it. It was given to them for some specific reason. I don't even remember why.
Yeah, his was obvious because his name's Newt, so just Neuter just makes sense, Judas, well, there was kind of a little tiff between him and somebody else, and they said that Mikey was a traitor for whatever reason, so
they called him Judas, and that just kind of stuck.
We just thought that was kind of funny, so we just started calling him Judas.
There's a whole bunch of people, a whole family of people with Cooter names that are running around here, there, and everywhere. There's people that come and hang out with us and have a good time, and after 20 years, we're still having a good time.
Very good. I was always curious of that. I've always wanted to know, like, what does that actually mean? Raw Cooter. Okay, fine.
So you can probably figure that one out.
You love oyster.
Yeah, sure. I do like oysters, actually.
I guess. Okay.
Some say clams.
Well, I grew up in a family. My dad was a bass player, and he was an attorney when he had me. But before he met my mom, he was a bass player in North Mississippi and Memphis, and he played in a band called the Kangaroos. And they recorded at Stax, and he also did a record with Jim Dickinson back in the 60s in the Sugar Cube Blues Band. So there was always music going on in my house. He taught me how to play bass, and my mom played piano. We always listened to music, and I just remember growing up around it. It was just always there. And eventually I got into heavy metal. That was really my first love of music outside of what my parents did. And then I started listening to punk because metal just got cheesy, and so we started combining the two really with rock and roll, and we wanted to do something different in the beginning. To us, being successful was really more about playing music that didn't sound like anybody else, and we didn't want to sound like anybody else, and we set out to do something differently, and it kind of went over people's head in the beginning. It took us a while to really settle into a sound and tighten it up to songs we play now. But
yeah, I was pretty much a juvenile delinquent. When I was 14, 15. My dad was a preacher, so I don't know. I guess I was a rebellious kid, and so naturally I gravitated to punk rock and heavy metal, and I don't know, I've always loved that kind of music and rock and roll, and that's just what I'm into, and that's just what I like to play, and you know, that's not ever going to change, I guess. That's just, I like to rock. You know?
Check this out.
We are really good friends with a band from Hattiesburg called Before I Hang, and they've been around a little bit longer than we have, and they're very similar to us, kind of dirty rock and roll with punk and metal influences. And they're actually the longest running band in the state. Not us, it's them. You know, we're in like North Mississippi, they're South Mississippi, and we played with them for years, and they're very, very good.
You guys ever had any civil wars? You're like meeting Jackson, and you decide who takes the whole state?
No.
No.
There's not a lot of punk and metal in Mississippi, so it's not. There hasn't really been a lot of rivalries to speak of. It's you know, basically bands get together and just have a good time, you know, and enjoy it while you can.
Right.
We've run into a few promoters that were pricks, but that's about it, you know, that rip us off or whatever. But
it's kind of fitting that we're at this tunnel because we kind of have represented Oxford's underground for a long time, and even though we've been around for a long time, we're still the underdog for some reason. I can't figure out, but that's just the way it goes.
One of my earliest memories of you guys were as a double-decker a couple years ago when you played back behind the old two-stick.
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking past that alley and being like, oh, this is a whole different thing. But it was cool. I mean, I dug it. Like, my dad's always kept me pretty open to music, so
Right.
that was a pretty cool experience. I feel like you guys have done that really well.
Thanks.
As
I
far as,
appreciate that. That came about because we started playing on the streets at Double Decker because they wouldn't let us play on the stage at Double Decker. So we played there for 3 straight years, and then finally after the 4th year, they're like, "All right, come play the stage." And so that was great, but they haven't invited us back.
no, they haven't invited us back. I wonder why. Wow. I wrote the riff, you wrote the lyrics, so you know, you'll have to explain the lyrics.
The lyrics about Bustin' Loose is really just more about setting yourself free and believing in yourself, and just not falling into a routine, trying to stay alive and stay active and just get out of the same old, you know, just kind of digging yourself out of, don't dig a hole for yourself, you know, keep moving forward, don't look back. Well, right above here is a pathway now. It's a running path, but it used to be a railroad, and this railroad is well over 150 years old, and by 1861 it was basically Highway 55 leading from Ohio all the way down to Mississippi to Jackson. And when the Civil War broke out, the U.S. government strategy was to take over the rivers and the railroads. So they came down the Tennessee River at Shiloh and eventually took over Corinth and marched from Corinth to Holly Springs. And from Holly Springs, they took the railroad down to Oxford and fought their way down here the whole way. Grant was the general that was involved, and Pemberton was the Confederate general that was defending this place. There was a fort at Grenada that he had his troops coming up here, and they fought on the Tallahatchie River. There's actually a marker there that they put up about a year ago that you can see right before you go over the river now. There's fortifications on both sides. And Grant eventually made it to Oxford and occupied Oxford for about a month until General Van Dorn marched around Oxford to Pontotoc and went to Holly Springs and cut his Grant supply line off and captured a bunch of troops in Holly Springs. And Grant eventually abandoned Oxford and the railroad here and went back to Memphis and came down the Mississippi River to take Vicksburg. That's what they were really after, was Vicksburg. And so there's a whole Civil War history here that people don't really know about, and this tunnel used to hold the railroad up a long time ago.
I'm Gentry Webb, better known as Raw Cooter.
I'm Newt Rayburn, better known as Newt Cooter, and we're the Cooters. This has been our Oxford session.